Hey, what's up everybody? Andre with AndreReese.Biz. All right, I'm your favorite cyclecast guy out here on these RVA streets. I'm out here trying to bring you guys another cyclecast, talk about a few topics here. But man, I went to hop on my bike and my moto bay, and she was busted. She had a flat tire. I must have gotten a flat tire towards the very end of the ride we did last Friday. I haven't ridden my bike since then, but I had to go ahead and pull out my other one. What is this one? This is a Diamondback. This is the one I had drop shipped out here when me and Marilyn were first started the date. So I'm on that bike right now as my backup. Everything is cool. And right now I'm headed over. Actually, let me just do this real quick. So let's just go ahead and, before I start rambling too much, let's just jump into what we're going to talk about today for topics, and then we can go ahead and get started. So today I'm going to talk about the movie, the AI doc that just came out recently. I'm going to also talk about the redistricting referendum that's on the ballot for Richmond. Today is the final day to vote on it. We're also going to talk about Spanberger's drop in popularity, and also throw in a little bit about summer travel. So, like I was saying, I'm back on my Diamondback, and I'm glad I got it back up. If not, I would have had to call no joy today and head back to the garage because I wouldn't have been able to, ride. But in the meantime, at least things are cool with having the second bike, and I can go ahead and make it happen. I don't have any suspension on this bike, so just bear with me as we go to make this happen. And I think right now, temperature-wise, it's about 62 degrees out here in Richmond. So we had a cold warning last night that all wore off. It was a freeze warning. So now we're kind of back to climbing temperature again. So all good, gotta make it happen for sure. So let's go ahead and start talking about the first topic, which is the AI movie. It's got a much longer title. I don't remember what it was offhand. It was kind of purposed as being a documentary, and I think we saw it the first day that it came out. It was like a Friday, maybe 3 weeks ago. I didn't have a chance to jump on my bike and talk about it, but highly recommend you guys watching the movie if you get a chance to. And pretty much the premise of it, without ever giving everything away to you guys, is, of course it's about artificial intelligence and it advancing, and all the major players, are there. They've got Anthropic, they're talked about, ChatGPT, talked about Claude, all the good stuff. As far as the brand names of the AI devices are concerned. So, and a number of the founders of these companies, as well as current present day CEOs, were also a part of this. And kind of what the premise of the movie is, it's like, how in the world will AI affect me? And so I guess the one that's backed the movie, I don't know if he's done other movies before in the past or not, I didn't look it up. I don't know if that makes much of a difference. But he essentially is thinking about what type of effects will AI have on the future of his child that's on the way. Here, hang on there. Future of his child that's on the way, along with, how is it going to affect him raising the child and all that. So he kind of started down a rabbit hole to kind of get an understanding of AI and how it works and how it might potentially affect him and his family. And he was lucky enough to get the majority of individuals, like I said, that started these companies to actually come sit down and talk with him about their thoughts about AI. And I'll tell you, the movie itself is presented, and this is kind of maybe the sign of the times now, but the movie starts down one side of the rabbit hole, which is like maybe the extreme left, the other side is the extreme right, and somehow they kind of, maybe there's like a small amount of convergence in the middle, but a lot of it was, talking about AI and how dangerous it is, how it's going to destroy mankind. There's a lot of things that we don't know about how it works and how it thinks, and some potential dangers that we're all potentially subject to. So that's kind of what the movie was on one side. Then the other side, they had other folks who are like, it's not that bad, but we really just don't know. And I remember not too long ago, maybe 5 years ago, maybe less than that, maybe 4 or 3, the CEO of Instagram was being interviewed. I forget what his name is. And in these interviews, they were asking about how the algorithms work for Instagram. And they pretty much said, we have no idea. We have a general idea, a thought of what they can do and what they're capable of. But in the end, we have really no idea what the output is. And so all we can do is kind of manage the results and maybe tweak things a little bit, and the data sets that they're fed. And not much has changed, because AI does operate off of algorithms for the most part, and specific formulas that were created to be able to parse data and be predictive in their answers and all that. So we don't really know ultimately in the end what the effects of AI will be and won't be. And so watching this movie here, you get the general sense that you have to kind of appreciate at least both polar opposite sides are produced and talked about, but a lot of it may be in the sense of scare tactics, etc. But I highly recommend you guys get a chance to check out the movie. If you're not really familiar with AI and what it's capable of doing and what the potentials are of artificial intelligence, it'll definitely get you up to speed, with the quickness, and I would rate the movie a strong 4.5 out of 5 stars, and they pretty much gave the opportunity for everybody to come that's involved, even people like Elon Musk. At first he had committed to being a part of the movie, but towards the end they let you know that he ultimately declined to be a part of the production, and there's a number of other people that did the same thing also as well. So AI, as we all know it, is at this point there's no way to put the toothpaste back in the tube, and there's no way to put the ketchup back in the bottle. It's out, and we need to all be very, very cautious and aware of what its capabilities are, and whatever your profession might be, most likely it's going to be affected by it in some way. Some professions more than others, and it's reasonable to try to build up. Let me cross the street here, make sure we're good. All right, yeah, make sure you guys try to build up some type of resistance. That way you're protected when it comes to artificial intelligence, and you'll be able to continue to be able to make a living. And this is a good time right now for sure for anybody that's wants to be as valuable as possible, to try to make sure you guys can learn as much about the technology as possible. And it's not to the point where you have to know how to program it, you have to really understand how to prompt it correctly and become more or less a prompt engineer. And like I said, I don't use AI in any kind of way directly in tax preparing and dealing with data from my clients. The one thing I do use it for is research. And recently, the other thing I started using it for is some of my thumbnails that I'm using on my YouTube videos. So I've been seeing a lot of folks lately that have been using AI prepared thumbnails, and I spent roughly time in the tank, roughly about 8 hours trying to figure it out, and I was able to. I was so excited. I said, you know what, if I can't figure it out, I'm just gonna default back and ask Marilyn, and I was almost at that point. So her brother's happy he was able to get that figured out. And if I do use it in the future, it's gonna only be in a capacity where I'm not, here, hang on a second, cutting down a tree over here. It's gonna be in a capacity where it doesn't put my clients' data at risk for being mined and harvested and become part of the training for any of the AI agents or, tools or agents, whatever it might be. So that's it. That's it for Project AI. So let's go ahead and jump into real quick. Let's talk about the redistricting referendum out here in Richmond, Virginia. And that's actually where I'm riding to right now, is to go drop off my ballot. Today is the last day. And what I've done, here, let me keep an eye, make sure I don't get cut off here with any of these guys. So, okay, I think we're good. And so, what is the redistricting memorandum? And so, as you guys know right now, everything is highly politicized, and everybody is jockeying for position, the red team and the blue team. The big thing that's coming up right now is the midterm elections. And so every 4 years they have the presidential election, and then they backfill it every 2 years, depending upon how it all works out, with sporadic elections across the country for the Congress itself. And as you guys are aware, the red team right now completely controls the presidency, as well as the House of Representatives, as well as the Senate. And the Senate is comprised, so we essentially have 50 states, and the Senate is comprised of roughly 2 senators per state, no matter how big or how small they are. I've kind of talked about this before in the past, but I'll just give a high-level overview of it. And so whether you have 3 people in your state or 100 million, each state gets a representative to the Senate of 2. So altogether, there are 100 senators. And the remaining 50 states, there's roughly, I think it's 435 House seats that are available. And the House seats are divided up based upon population in each state and each district. And so roughly about 750,000, let me make sure I don't get into issue with this crane here. I think it's going on the roundabout, so we're good. Okay, so it's just turning. So yeah, roughly 750,000 people right now make up each district. And so what they do every 10 years, they'll turn around and they'll do a census. And so what's the reason for the census? Primary reason is to, count individuals There's different programs and different things that are based upon that to get demographics of the American population, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. All good. But the main thing of why they have the Senate, or they have the census, is so that they can figure out how to divvy up the House of Representatives and individual states. And so what ends up happening is the more people you have in your state, the more representatives in theory you're going to get, because each representative seat represents roughly about 750,000 American citizens. All good. And like I said, we have a representative government. So those representatives of that block of people should generally represent, overall the feeling, the thoughts, the cadence of that group. So if the majority of people there are feeling a certain way on specific issues, they theoretically should be representing the majority of the people that are in that voting block that they oversee. And so all good. And every state has a different amount. And so what the big thing that's happening right now is a lot of the areas of the country that are blue in general, me coming from California, there's been mass exodus and mass flight from those areas into other areas of the country that are a little bit more conservative or a little bit more red-leaning. And it's created a reduction in the amount of people that are in those individual states. And so when the people leave, eventually when they do the census and they turn around and divvy up the House of Representatives, ultimately what will happen is if you've had a lot of flight from your state, you figure every 750,000 people that have left over the last 10 years, if you look at each mark, 2020 to 2030, you'll lose one representative seat in your state. All good. That's just the way the government is set up, and that's how it works. And then on the flip side, if you've had migrations of individuals into your area, you could essentially gain more seats. So places like Texas or Tennessee or Florida that have had massive inflows of folks that have left and turned around and come back and have materialized in other states, they're going to end up having an advantage. So what they've done is they've had to really fight really hard to try to keep the numbers up as much as possible. And so that's some of the reasons why you've seen some of the policies and behaviors that have taken place in the past that have encouraged folks. I'm not even going to say what they specifically are. You guys already know what they are. They've essentially encouraged folks to come into their individual state and increase their population. And at the same time, that's allowing them to shore themselves up for the up and coming census. And then on the flip side, here, let me grab my ballot out of my bag real quick. Uh-oh. So what has happened is, there's been policies that are put in place to try to shore up everything that's happening. All good. It is what it is. So, and so what there's been happening lately is they typically will do these redistricting within the individual state, and there's not supposed to be really any gerrymandering that goes on. And so when gerrymandering takes place, it affects the fairness of the representation in those particular areas, and it kind of ultimately pushes things a little bit more towards one party on the red side or the left side. All good, we get it. And so what's happening out here right now is we have a referendum that's taking place that is designed to, here's my ballot right here. I'm gonna drop it in the box. So we're good to go. Let me put my thing back up here. Okay, so we're good. So we have a referendum that they put into place where they want to completely redistrict the state of Virginia. And so we have a very interesting history here in Virginia when it comes to our representative areas. We have roughly 11, let me do this real quick. So we have roughly 11 districts in total. And the way everything's divided up right now, the Democrats control. So there's 6 Democratic seats and there are 5 Republican seats. And so Virginia itself is what they call very purple. It's kind of a balance between red and blue, and when you mix the two colors together, it comes out purple. And things kind of shift back and forth a little bit over time. You know, sometimes the Republicans are in control, sometimes the Democrats are in control. You know, definitely all good. And the other thing too is, the one thing that can affect us is the governor. And so they were smart enough, if you want to look at it that way, to be able to only allow the governor to have 4 years in office, that's it. So no matter how good they're doing, no matter how bad they're doing, you know, here, the governor, they've got a 4-year run in it, they got to sit it out, then they can come back and run it again, and then sit it out another term and come back and run it again. You know, so we just had Governor Youngkin that was in office for 4 years, Republican, and moderate Republican at that. And we had Spanberger now that is Democrat, you know, so she's got 4 years to kind of make a run at it here and kind of make things happen and see where things go. And so, like I said, we've had it took us a lot to get to this point where we are right now. And so back in 2020, the state of Virginia went through redistricting reform. And so it was a significant issue and problem before. And like I said, the way I feel is that it's always best to be in balance as much as possible. That way everybody is forced to have to try to work together to try to make these things happen. And so back then, they tried to reform the way that the districts were being drawn, and they voted for a bipartisan commission to be formed, and the idea there was to try to keep it as fair as possible. So I think there was a total of 16 seats that were available on this commission. Some of them were exactly made up of the red side and the blue side when it comes to people that were in the legislative branch in Virginia. And then at the same time, they also had a number of citizens of Richmond, Virginia, that were also part of this board. And so their idea was to have everything completely split, exactly 8 people on the red team, exactly 8 people on the blue team, and they would have to work together to figure out what would be a fair map. And so that's what the whole thought was. And in order for them to, it wasn't like a majority plus one. You had to have 12 people decide to vote on the map in order to make it work and then consider it to be successful. So what ended up happening was, and kind of a fallback, if they weren't able to make it happen, make it work with this bipartisan commission, they would ultimately push it down or push it up to the state Supreme Court for them to try to come up with a fair map. And what the Supreme Court would do of Richmond is that they would hire experts that represented both sides. They'd have one expert that was on the red side, one expert that was on the blue side, and then they would work together and come up with a fair map on how everything is drawn. And so, to make a long story short, we went through all that stuff. So the bipartisan commission was created because of the vote, became part of our the way that we move forward in this process. The bipartisan commission was not able to come up with a fair map, and then they threw their hands up in the air. And I think they're only allowed to have a certain number of votes before it's considered to be, it's not working. So there's only a limited amount of time they're able to try to make this work. And so that didn't work, so they ended up going, the process went up to the Supreme Court, and the experts that came up with the map, one on each side of the fence, the red and the blue side, that is the current map that we have right now. And it represents 6 people on the blue team, and it represents 5 people that are on the red team, all good. And so what's been happening lately in the country is there's been midterm redistrictings. And so what's happened is there's one that took place in, let me get by this here. There's one that took place in Texas. They completely redistrict, and California jumped in and said, hey, we're going to redistrict also as well. And there was a lot of backlash on both sides about what happened. But in the end, the 2 results of each redistricting kind of balanced each other out and kind of canceled themselves out. All good. And then to add legitimacy on top of that, we know that the Supreme Court leans more conservative than liberal. And the Texas map went up to the Supreme Court. They came back and ruled that it was cool, no issues, no problems. So you would naturally think, well, that was the reason why, because they were being completely biased in their decision. But when California's map went up to get blessed or denied by the Supreme Court said their map is cool also as well. And so at this point now, what's happening is the Dems in the state, they've taken over the assembly completely, and as well as the governorship. They are very concerned about the potential outcome of the the midterm elections, and them losing even more seats unless they do something radical to try to make things fair. At least that's the way things are. That's essentially the language that's on the ballot itself. This is a chance for us to make things fair. So vote yes. And that's kind of the background of the whole thing. And so here we are today on the 21st. This is the day that the election is taking place. And how do I feel about the whole thing? Me personally, I'm not going to say which way I voted. I think everybody that is going to be affected by this initiative, and I don't think I even said it. So what they're trying to do, they're trying to make the entire state go from a 6-to-1 ratio right now, where Dems control 6 pieces of the House, and the Republicans, the red team, controls 5 pieces of the House. They're trying to make it so it's a 10-to-1 ratio, where the blue team, the new map that they've drawn and come up with, and it's been already signed by Spanberger, it's 10-to-1. And so it's going to take and put 10 dim areas, or 10 blue areas. Okay. And then you're going to have just one red area. And so like I said, I feel that things are bad enough as they are already. And I think the most basic premise of our government, and you can say whatever you want to say, about this or that or the other, I always feel that we need to be representative of the actual people. And we all know, looking at the last map that they had for the 2020 for election, that pretty much all the major city areas are going to be blue throughout the United States. I can't even think of a major city metropolitan area that is not blue. And all the rural areas are going to ultimately be red. And let me make sure I can get through here. And so if you drive around in Virginia, there's so much of the state that is rural. And, you know, and so by flipping things, you know, this is not representative of the state. And so whether folks want to vote one way or another for it, and I get the logic on both sides, I'm always going to, I'm one of those professions where we always try to do the right thing. And I've been told and trained and all this whole thing. And if you're in an environment where things are not right or not correct, you're supposed to say something. And if you push it up the flagpole and nobody wants to do anything about it, you know, you ultimately have to tap out and leave and quit working for that company, you know. And so I kind of still feel that way about pretty much everything. You know, you have to kind of do what's right. And then, like I said, no matter what the other side is doing, whether it's correct or incorrect, you know, I think you should always try to be as, you know, straightforward as possible when it comes to almost anything. That way, you don't ultimately, in the end up compromising yourself. So I've gone ahead and turned my ballot in, and you know, I strongly believe in our system, and you know, and I kind of feel this way. You know, a lot of folks right now are not happy with the U.S. I get it, period. And a lot of people don't like our country, hate our country, all that kind of stuff. I kind of look at it upon this way. If you are from a family that has had a member of your family that has maybe done something that the majority of the people in the family don't like anymore, and it might be public, you know, you can't just throw out your whole family and the name that you have in order to completely distance yourself from it. You are who you are, and hopefully over time you can kind of work through things and things will get better. And that's kind of what my hope is here. And so if folks are not happy with our current presidential situation, all good. We only have 2.5 years left. And a lot of things can happen in the meantime. And I'm also the person that when it comes to, and I'll tell you, all my life, I went to church and grew up in church. And so many things were based on scare tactics and the unknown and stuff that might be inevitable. And most of those things ultimately didn't pan out, didn't happen, you know. And so that's kind of how I feel about a lot of the things that happen right now. Is there's always the fear of the boogeyman, there's always the fear of the unknown. But what can we really count upon, you know, to be based on, you know, facts and circumstances? So whatever it is that you guys believe, do that, vote that way. And if you don't feel that way about it, you know, vote against it. Everybody has one vote. But the whole point of this argument here is to, however you feel about it, stand on business. And be sure that you vote. Be sure that you end up getting your right to vote counted. You know, so that's all I got to say about the referendum. And we'll find out tomorrow how things are and how things went. And we're either going to have the 10-to-1 map pass, or we're going to have the 6-to-5 map kind of stay where it is. And you know, we'll see how that all goes. So, and I think there's other referendums that are working in other areas right now of the country.
0 miles.
I didn't do any research to look up any of those information at all. But if you have something like this that's coming to an area like yours, you're going to have to make a decision on, you know, where you stand on these rules, and you know, vote accordingly. And if it doesn't work out, and the thing is, if it doesn't work out, it's supposed to go back to what it was, you know, and is that true or not? Who knows? And sometimes when certain things happen, it creates a precedence for certain things later on. You know, that's one of the things that you're going to find in history. So all good. It is what it is. So let's move on and talk about, since we're talking about Spanberger, let's talk about Spanberger and her most recent poll numbers. So roughly about, she's had a drop in popularity out here in Richmond, Virginia. So she just hit her 100-day mark in office, and there's been some historical organizations that poll people for their support and how they feel about governors and so on. And so she hit her 100-year mark, or 100-day mark, and she has roughly about 46% approval rating, or approval rating in Richmond, Virginia. She has roughly about a 47% disapproval rating somewhere. So the numbers are very, very close there. And then the margin is essentially people that are undecided, that don't have an opinion. And so what's the big giant hoopla? Of course, now folks are on the red team are touting that she's probably the lowest ranking governor of in modern history. How long is modern history and how do you define it? Nobody really says. So, you know, I did look real quick on using Gemini, and probably going back maybe 4 or 5 or 6 governors. Actually, I think it's more or less closer to 5 governors in Richmond around the same time. Her rating is low. The other ones, there was one person that was at 47%, so technically she is lower. And I did see even somebody like Youngkin that was a Republican, his rating was 52%, you know. And, you know, number-wise, the numbers are very, very similar, but it only takes 1 point to lose a game. And if people want to stand on that, they're definitely going to do that for sure. So let me keep going here real quick. And so there we are. That's where the numbers are. And so they've polled Spanberger about it, and then she doesn't really have a care or concern in the world about her numbers. And in reality, that's probably the thing, you know, because ultimately, no matter how well she does at her job or how poor she does, the legacy of her decisions are what's going to impact the state. And most importantly, you know, she only has 4 years. That's it. And so no matter what she does, no matter what she pushes through, it only is going to have a 4-year effect on Virginia. And then so they can have somebody else come in and undo everything and reverse everything. All good, you know. And if you take a look and kind of look into the numbers, everything is pretty much polar divided. So the red team, for the most part, supports her, and the ones that, and I think the numbers is roughly 8 out of 10 people that are on the blue team support her, and I think it's only like 2 out of 10 people on the red team support her. So these numbers are all expected, you know, considering how things are. But I think the one surprising thing is they said that during the prior election, roughly, I think it was 92% of Black Americans supported her over Earl Spears, and that approval rating now has dropped down to roughly about 2/3 or 66% within the Black American community. You know, all good. And I think one of the biggest complaints that people have or don't have or have about her right now is that she kind of ran on a platform of things being, of her being a moderate. And so once she was able to get in the office, she started to push through a lot of things that were very progressive, and a lot of people aren't necessarily happy about that. You know, all good, it's what happens. And so, you know, and I think ultimately, when it's all said and done, what we can get from this is, progressive politics right now is on the rise. And this is the thing. A lot of folks will call anybody that votes for Donald Trump MAGA. That's not true. Not true at all. You can actually ask Gemini and say, hey, is everybody that voted for Trump MAGA? And it'll say absolutely not. Absolutely not. And there's different variations of people within the red party. And you can also ask Gemini, do it yourself and ask it, and say, hey, is everybody that voted for Kamala, are they a progressive? And it'll say absolutely not. And so there is a battle within each one of the political classes, the red team and the blue team, as things kind of change over time. You might have the ultra progressives that might represent, folks that are on the left side. You might have folks that are MAGA leaning or diehard MAGAnites. They might be the ones that represent everything on the red team. But there's no monolith that completely, that will completely represent, the party as far as like one name. And I think people right now, when they start saying, there's certain people that are in the red team that are upset and fed up with MAGA or upset with Trump, they're not going to go and vote for people on the blue team. And if people are absolutely upset, with what's happening on the progressive side, they're not going to go and vote for people on the red team. It's the people that are kind of like the margin in the middle of the bell-shaped curve that are the most influential. Pretty much outside of that, everybody's kind of dug in. And so I say all that to say, now with us having Spanberger doing what she's doing, being in office, making things happen the way that she's making things happen, as things kind of move forward, and people really only have one consideration, if they want to get away from the current administration, folks are going to have to make a decision, or they actually will make a decision, decide as what they've seen so far through and I've talked about this before, what they've seen so far with these previews is what they want to have, spread across the country. And so how do you ultimately move beyond the issue of, being motivated by, fear sometimes? You kind of have to look at things in the sense of, policies over people and feelings. And so if you kind of take a chance and dig deep into Spanberger and what her policies were, and what her record was before in the past, that's kind of what you have to go by. That way there's no surprises. So, like I said, she only has roughly, a little bit over 3.5 years left in office. If anything, it's a preview. What's happening in New York right now with the mayor being a socialist Democrat, that's kind of a preview for people to kind of see. And these are the things that people are going to weigh in their mind. Like I said, the folks that are fully entrenched, they don't care one way or another. They're going to vote, based upon the party lines. But the margin in the middle, where everything is, where you have the greatest chance to be able to, have things be changed, as far as constituents that you can sway one way or another. Those are going to be the folks that are going to make up the margin in the middle. So, and when you look at the numbers that are coming out of the surveys, it would one way or another, it's going to allow folks to make a decision to do things better or continue to do things the way that they've always been. So that's about all I gotta say about that. I live here in the state of Virginia. I want nothing but the best for the state of Virginia. In my mind right now, there's nothing that I can do to change anything. She's in office. If I don't like her, she's in office. And the majority of folks in this particular state have decided to put her in office. And that's the will of the people. And she represents what the majority of the folks that are here asked for. So like I said, representative government. And if people in large numbers are not necessarily feeling things in the early stages of what happened, maybe what was sold, people made a bad decision because they didn't ask the right questions, or they chose to put other things over what their best interests were. So everybody's going to have to kind of reconcile those things on all sides. All good. So let's talk about the last thing here. Get a little bit of a cough. Might be the pollen that's in the air. So let's talk about the last thing here, which is summer travel. So right now, things are starting to heat up around the United States. The snowpack and it's starting to thaw, and folks are, we just had Easter come and go, and folks now are starting to think about summer travel. And man, we've been, like I said, right now, our travel that we have is extremely fluid right now. And a lot of it's based upon, conditions, travel conditions, pricing, airfare, etc. And what I've been doing is, for some of the stuff that we have way in advance, as soon as I'm able to buy tickets right now, I will jump on it and buy tickets like right away. Right away is what I will do. And because that's like the very first day that they're available, and we're good to go from there. But tickets right now are all over the place. They're increasing, they take a little bit of a dip, they come back and increase again. And what I've done for the most part is I'll go ahead and buy the tickets if I need to. And I keep an alert on Google, and that's actually a good thing to do. Any tickets that I'm thinking about buying, I'll go ahead and set up a Google alert and a Google flight alert. It'll keep track of the airfare as it fluctuates, and if it goes down, you're gonna get a notification that the price went down on the airfare, and I'll go ahead and jump in. And then the other thing that's important is, if the airfare, I've already purchased it, and I get an alert that it's gone down, I buy pretty much all the flights that I buy are all with American. That's where I have my status at. And what I'll do is, if I bought the ticket at, let's say $700 round trip, and it goes down to like $550, I got two options. I can turn around and message their customer service support. And what they do is, I have priority, and then somebody will come on the line right away. I'll tell them, hey, I went ahead and bought these tickets and they went down $550. They'll say, right away, sir, we'll go ahead and adjust it for you. Then I get a store credit that I can use another day for another flight. Or I'll just cancel the flight. Or actually what I'll do is I'll book the new flight to make sure I can lock in the price, and then I turn around and cancel the other one. And and just before I'm ready to hit send and lock it down, I'll go ahead and I did. So basically, let me rephrase that. So what I'll do is I'll lock the flight down so that it's ready to go. All I have to do is just press go, and then I'll turn around and cancel the other one after I've selected my seats and everything. That way, I can immediately apply that store credit from the flight cancellation to the new flight, and I'm good to go. And sometimes I've had as many as 3 and 4 travel credits that have been stacked up. And then also too, Some of the things that we want to do right now, we're trying to pack them into one thing if possible. Like, for example, if you're going to go somewhere, if you're going to fly there, stay there, do stuff, it might be cheaper just to go on a cruise, you know, because the price per day includes everything. All you got to do is just get your airfare to get there. So we're looking at trying to manage travel and destinations and things that we're going to do based upon that, you know. And so what's my advice to you guys? As you guys are out here thinking about travel right now for the summer, and actually even some of the stuff that we're looking at doing, we've moved a little bit closer to home. And I have companion tickets, and Maryland has companion tickets. So we're like, okay, all we have to do is just buy this particular trip with our companion ticket. And then the same thing with her. All she has to do is buy another trip with a companion ticket for me. And we can go on these things that we kind of want to do. So you're going to have to use a little bit of ingenuity right now when it comes to trying to book your travel and change and decide on your vacations. And even one of the things that we looked at, I was like, we were kicking it around, and I said, okay, I went to Gemini and said, hey, if we were going to do this type of thing, where are some low-cost alternatives that we can get to from our airport, which is, RIC? And so it gave a whole bunch of ideas and suggestions. And we had even got to the point where we had one trip that we were going to book, and we ended up canceling it and took it off the agenda. Well, this variation of where Gemini told us to do and go, it would allow us to be able to meet the objectives of that original trip. So that's like back on the burner again. So like I said, when you guys are out here this summer, just be flexible with your airfare, be flexible with where you're trying to stay. And if you haven't booked the stuff already, you want to try to book things as quickly as possible if you can. Monitor flights and how they change over time. Request a store credit if you need to, and make sure that whatever it is you decide to do, that if something happens or something comes up, that it's fully refundable, at least by a certain date that gets close to where it is, where you plan on traveling. And what I've done is, there's a number of things that we've booked and I've paid for, and I've made sure, especially with the hotels, that they are all 100% refundable by a certain date. And I pretty much book most of my travel through the American Airlines website, because I have status. It gives me like super amounts of miles, and it counts towards my status also as well. And I can search on there through the search engine, like if we're looking for hotels, a place that gives free breakfast, or a place that provides free cancellation, and a number of the different places that are on there. They also provide you with the ability to not have to pay at all. All you're doing is essentially booking your stay, and then when you get to be like 72 hours before, it'll go ahead and roll and book your card, as long as you haven't canceled it. So I'm using those kind of things to be a little bit flexible. And even one of the vacations that we're looking at doing, I'm even considering downgrading the level of hotel that we have. That way we can pack in other things for the same price. So like, for example, if the trip was gonna cost like, if the hotel was gonna cost $2,500, I'm just making up a number. If the hotel was gonna cost $2,500, and it's a really nice, decent place, I'm opting for staying in a place that is $1,500. That way I can use the $1,000 for rental car and activities and that type of stuff. And then by the time it's all done and said, we might pay in total $3,000 for the whole trip, instead of paying $2,500 plus like another $1,500 for other stuff. So just trying to be smart with the money, and recommend you guys do the same thing also as well. So that's it, guys. That's the talk on travel. Just be careful out there right now in these travel streets. Things are a little bit gnarly, and they are definitely heating up. And then the increase in fuel cost. If you're looking at buying a cruise, booking a cruise, take a look at the different cruise lines that don't have contractual obligations where you sign, where if the fuel price goes up, you end up having to pay more for the cruise because of it, out of your pocket, you know, so you got to kind of look out for those kind of things. I know a good example is like Virgin. They don't charge you more afterwards if fuel goes up. And I did notice that one of the cruises that we had looked at before, and this was actually before the skirmish that's taking place over there in the Middle East, is you know, that the price on the cruise had jumped significantly. Actually not significantly, went up from like $22.50 to like $2,700, $500. $500 is $500. So that's it, guys. I'm done. I'm gonna go inside, get something to eat, and take a shower. We got some plans tonight, and I'll probably talk about them when I get out here and ride again tomorrow. So appreciate you guys as always, and please continue to like, follow, and share the content. If there's any questions you have about anything, please leave it in the comments, and we'll be back to talk again on the other side, guys. All right, take care. Peace. In my life. Oh, shit. Okay, my brother fell. This is black ice. Okay. All right, I'm okay. All systems check. All right, I'm good. So let me just penguin it.